Welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Freed, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, what's up, man? How you doing?
Feeling better than I thought it would be at the bye. When Zach Wilson came in, I thought, oh boy, here comes the roof caving in. And there's some cracks in the foundation, but we still have a roof among us for the time being, especially against a gauntlet of quarterbacks that we face, which we'll dive into that comment from Robert Saleh pretty soon, won't we, Justin?
That we will. We got some fun stuff planned. We are going to talk about some weird, unfounded criticism, I guess, of Robert Saleh. But more importantly, we're talking about changes the Jets can make at the bye week, because even though they are 3-3, and this is probably better than a lot of people thought they would be after Aaron Rodgers went down, especially with wins over the Bills and the Eagles, there's still some changes we want to be made. And then, of course, we're closing off the show, if you've seen the title, with some Midseason Awards. It's kind of midseason. It's bye week, whatever. Just kind of, running through some awards like the Grammys. I don't know. What would you call this, Mike? The Jetties?
The Grammys, the Oscars, the Golden Globes.
No, but what would you call this one? The Jetties?
CMA Awards, the BET Awards. I don't know. He needs like a catchier name. Okay.
Yeah, like what do you the TJP award?
I'm thinking like something Jets like not the Salehs, the Woodies. We can't do that. Sounds bad.
The Woodies is so good. It's awful, but so good.
Oh God. All right. Well. All right. So award show to be named later. We'll do it. Then we'll come up with the name later. That's how a lot of professional shows operate. So we'll do that. But before that, I got a message.
I love the Woodies. I'm just
off the rails 3 minutes in. So let's get back on the rails, and I'll tell you about our friends over at DraftKings, because DraftKings is running a new promotion that you do not want to miss. New users can place a $5 bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets, and you'll be rewarded with a separate, no sweat, single game parlay every single day when you opt in. All you have to do is sign up with our code FSBETS. That is FSBETS. Using the code not only gets you the bonuses, but it directly supports the podcast, and that's how you want to show your support. We are very thankful for that. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use the code FSBETS to maximize your first bets and parlays. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever it may be that you get your podcasts. We're on all those sites, and YouTube and TikTok. Both of them are at the Jet Press. Make sure you give us a subscribe or a follow over there. We would very much appreciate it. Make sure you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, again, just to get us up the review charts, not for ego-stroking reasons. So now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let's dive right into more complaining and whining from Philadelphia fans. Does that sound outrageous? Now, normally the rancor is directed at their own. As we know, Philly fans are a fickle bunch who can be who can sour on people easily.
Don't you? And you live very close to Philly, is that correct?
That is right. I live in, especially I grew up too in New Jersey, kind of on the divide between North and South, like kind of right in the middle. So even though Central Jersey does exist, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it, there is a Central Jersey, but I'm still right in the middle geographically of North and South. So I got New York and Philly both mashing together at the same time. So I got the full front of fan bases that can sour on people very quickly my entire life growing up. Philly fans are among them. Even Philly media is among them, because Robert Saleh, in a rare moment of, I guess, emotion or just satisfaction, he comes out in the post-game press conference, and Saleh's not a talker. Outside of the keeping receipts comment from last year, which, again, he kind of backed up earlier before everything completely just calamitously messed up. They were winning games early on. And then I think I remember when Sauce was breaking out, he just went, hey, keep trying him in a post-game press conference. So outside of that, there's really not a lot of Rex Ryan-y shit talking. Then he comes out and he talks about how he embarrassed the gauntlet of quarterbacks he faced. And by his own admission, Dak got him. And I don't think anybody's going to deny that. And Mac Jones beat him, although he didn't play very well. But he did play against the top 3 MVP finishers from last year: Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts. Not the exact order, but those are the top 3. And he allowed 3 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. So 3 multi-turnover games against 3 elite quarterbacks, including 2 of them who lost. I'd say that counts as an embarrassment for guys of their stature. Then Philly, in their post-game show, goes on the radio, on TV, on NBC Sports, and they say, I can't stand Robert Saleh, which immediately just really made my eyebrows perk up. I'm like, huh? I'm not saying that Philly fans got to love the opposing team's coach, especially after he won. And I'm not trying to just run PR for Robert Saleh here, but this is a guy who, if anything, is too nice of a guy half the time. A lot of our criticisms have been that he is not critical enough of some of his players. Totally nice guy, energetic guy, but not in a boastful way, like in an excited kind of way. This just seemed like, all right, Philly, can you guys stop crying for a little bit? I know you're going to be better than us in the regular. We're not doubting that. Just this seemed kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's just loser behavior, right? That's literally what it is. Robert Saleh had every right to talk smack, and I'm glad he did because his defense did embarrass 3 elite quarterbacks. And I know he walked back those comments yesterday. I think it was on NFL Network where he's like, I probably shouldn't have said the word embarrassed. No, you were absolutely right. You should have said that. Basically, he forced all 3 of those quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, to throw 3 interceptions each. I know Mahomes had that one called back, but just a ton of turnovers from all 3 of them. We talked about this in the past on this show. This Jets defense has a knack for making elite quarterbacks make really, really dumb mistakes. And they try to take too many shots, they're too aggressive, and this Jets defense punishes quarterbacks for doing that. So I have zero issue with anything Robert Saleh said. I think anyone who does have an issue is just fans of the opposing team who are clearly just sore losers. Like that's all it is. That's what it is. And it's just, it's those are silly comments. I don't know what else to say about it, but it's dumb. And look, the Eagles, like you said, Mike, they're a great team. They were undefeated for a reason. They are a better team than the Jets, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, I also hate the narrative, and some Eagles fans, I've seen this on Twitter, being like, oh, the Jets didn't beat us. We beat ourselves. Like Jalen Hurts beat the Eagles. No, like you might have a case if the Jets defense didn't also make Josh Allen do that and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if it's not for the questionable calls in that Kansas City game, we might be sitting here talking about how the Jets defense single-handedly or almost single-handedly carried them the wins over the Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles, where they embarrassed all 3 of those quarterbacks. So no, the Eagles didn't beat themselves, just like the Bills didn't beat themselves, and the Chiefs didn't almost beat themselves. It was the Jets defense. That's what it was. The Jets beat them. The Jets forced those turnovers. They forced those mistakes. They weren't unforced. They weren't unprompted, because this has become a trend with the Jets defense. And honestly, I'm excited to see what they do against Justin Herbert in a couple weeks, because it might be the same thing.
Scott Liberty coming out early in chat saying he shouldn't have used the word embarrassed. I mean, that's what he did.
Yeah,
what else do you call those performances? It was embarrassing for them. That doesn't mean that Josh Allen and Mahomes and Hurts are bad now. That doesn't mean that they're gonna 100% be better than them in the regular season. That's why it was impressive. That's why it was embarrassing, because I think everybody knows that they're an inferior roster compared to Kansas City and Buffalo and Philadelphia. And 1,000% it's a quarterback imbalance between the Jets and Buffalo, Kansas City, Philadelphia. That's why it's an embarrassment. It was a 5-0 team, the only unbeaten team, going against a 2-3 team that was limping into the bye with everybody hurt. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, you lose some offensive linemen, Tippmann, Vera Tucker. Like this was, I heard Eagles fans, they're playing our backups. You're playing the Jets backups too. It was backups on backups.
They were playing a starting cornerback who had been signed in a practice squad 11 days before that. Like, both teams were beat up. Both teams were incredibly beat up. Look, I'm of the belief that if you can back it up, talk as much shit as you want. That's always been my belief with sports when it comes to players, coaches. I don't care. Talk as much shit. If you can back it up on the field, then I don't care. That's why I have nothing against like Jalen Ramsey, someone like Jalen Ramsey, who has talked shit for so many years, but he's also one of the best cornerbacks in NFL history. Like, he's phenomenal. He's been great for a long time. I have no issue with that. I do have an issue with someone like Eli Apple, who, maybe talks some shit that he can't back up. That's one thing. You could maybe say the same thing about CJ Gardner-Johnson. I know he's had some run-ins with like Sauce Gardner, and now he's going at it with Deebo Samuel. Like, there's a line for sure, but as long as you're backing it up on the field, talk your talk, man. Talk your smack.
Scott again comes back. Didn't you say he walked the comment back? I mean, yeah, he did say embarrassed may have been not the choice of words he wanted, but I honestly think that's probably that seems a little Robert Saleh PR-y. Robert Saleh is very conscious of how things he says are perceived. Like, that's why I think his press conferences are very boring, and we're proud of this young man. He goes, everybody young men, and it's very diplomatic. Like, I think he just said, you know what? All right, maybe I should have taken some of the edge off. But I think deep in his heart of hearts, he could say it's an emotional moment, but he was calmed down. That was a post-game press conference. That wasn't on the field right after the interception. I think he had enough time to think about it. So
look, if Sean Payton came out and had the Broncos playing like one of the best offenses in football and they were 6-0 right now, nobody would give a shit about what he said about Nathaniel Hackett because he'd be backing it up. He would have said, hey, that guy sucked. I'm going to do a better job. And then he did do a better job. But the fact that his team still sucks is why everyone hates him. Like, if you are going to talk smack, you have to back it up. It's as simple as that. So if the Jets defense now comes out and they get embarrassed, yeah, those solid comments are going to look really stupid. And that's why people got on DJ Reed's case for saying the thing about the Bears defense, like saying, oh, the Jets can be as good as the Bears defense, was 85, 86, whatever it was. And then the Jets defense, admittedly, I would say has fallen short of those expectations, which they probably always were, albeit against great competition. But as long as you back it up, as long as you can back up what you're saying, who cares? And I would say, yeah, right now, the Jets have played 3 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they've made all of them look silly.
Now, one thing the Jets need to do to avoid future embarrassment will be making some changes. Now that the bye week is here, the Jets are 3-3, a record that even if they had Aaron Rodgers, I feel like a lot of Jets fans would have been happy with 3-3 because even with Rodgers, there were a lot of fans who said, you know what, Kansas City is going to be a tough game, Philadelphia is going to be a tough game, and Dallas is going to be a tough game. And because of that, I know that New England, obviously they win with Rodgers there, but 3-3 by no means the end of the world. And in an AFC that is a complete miasma right now, that is totally wide open, Jets are by no means dead. I don't think they're going to win the division. Miami's a cut above. I think we'll find out how much of a cut above they are when the Jets end up playing Miami. But I think the Jets are firmly in the wild card hunt. But they're not going to get there, in my opinion, unless they make a couple, not wholesale, but important changes. And one of them has been something that we have been screaming about for weeks and weeks and weeks. And maybe it'll finally crack through Nathaniel Hackett's extraordinarily thick skull at some point, because after weeks of you can't play Dalvin Cook, gradually his snaps have reduced. Now, Cook looks marginally better, but again, that's like saying, do you want a crap sandwich or a crap sandwich with mustard? Like, it's not that much of an improvement.
I always love your analogies, Mike.
It's functionally, it's not as much of an improvement for Dalvin Cook. But he at least listened. I think he heard the outside door and said, all right, maybe let's just lean on Bryce a little bit more. Let's not split with Cook. I don't know what language we need to describe this in, but he cannot continue playing Randall Cobb and expect this offense to work. I know Justin has an article up on the Jet Press describing just how bad Randall Cobb has been, but you don't even need some of the advanced stats Justin's going to throw out soon. You could just see 3 catches, barely catches any of the targets. He's not fast. He's not particularly athletic anymore. Even though he had some blocking ability back in his day, he's one of the worst blockers nowadays. Already caught the 2-point conversion. I mean, what do you want, a cookie? You're supposed to catch 2-point conversions with Randall Cobb. Like, I have not seen that 2-point conversion. May have been the best play he's had with the Jets, and that's through 6 weeks as a number 3 receiver.
It definitely was.
There are number 3 receivers in this league that get like 800 yards. Number 3 receivers. The Jets, what does he have? 30 yards?
20.
Like, it's 20. It's totally backwards. You can't continue this. He's showing you nothing. I don't know if Mecole Hardman or Xavier Gipson or freaking Jason Brownlee or whoever would come in after that. I don't know if they would show you more, but you at least got to try.
I believe you can make a case, and this is what I wrote in an article. I believe you can make a case that Randall Cobb is the worst player in the NFL right now. And if you're rolling your eyes at that and you're scoffing, let me read off some numbers to you. Like Mike said I was going to. Let me read off some numbers, because I don't think you can find a player in the NFL who plays as much as Cobb does, who produces as little and offers as little value to his team as he does. Randall Cobb has 3 catches for 20 yards through 6 games on 12 targets. 12 targets, 3 catches, 20 yards. This is despite the fact that he's playing 49% of the Jets' offensive snaps. In fact, in terms of yards per round run, or per route run, I think he is 3 times worse than any other receiver in the NFL. 3 times less productive. He is averaging 0.16 yards per route run. I think there's only 2 other guys below 0.6. He's at 0.16, 3 times worse than any other receiver in the NFL.
Imagine this in any other line of work. Imagine if you're a painter and you're trying to compete with somebody else and go, this guy paints houses 3 times worse than every other painter in this neighborhood. Like,
and it gets
how
worse.
does this happen?
It gets worse because you could be like, oh, well, maybe they're just not throwing him the ball, or maybe he's just not separating, but at least when they throw him the ball, he catches it. No, he has a 40% drop rate, which is the worst in the NFL. So when they do throw him the ball, he is the worst at catching it out of any wide receiver in the NFL. On top of that, you could be like, oh, well, maybe he provides value as a run blocker. Maybe he's got something there. No, out of 129 qualified wide receivers, his PFF run block grade ranks 129th. He's the worst run blocker at his position. He has the worst hands, and he can't get open. He's providing nothing. I don't think you can find somebody in the NFL who is worse at what they're doing right now than Randall Cobb. And he's playing 49% of snaps. And if you care at all about regular PFF grade, he also ranks 111th out of 112. I don't even give a shit about that. If he ranked 30th, I'd be saying the same thing, because I don't know how you watch his film and see these stats and go, he's providing anything of value. He's providing literally nothing. And I'm telling you, any other wide receiver that they throw out there, Herb Charles, who's a glorified special teamer, they could start him in a slot. He would he would be better than what Randall Cobb is providing right now. He'd be better at least something. He'd be better at catching, getting open, or blocking. One of the three, because right now, Cobb is literally the worst at all three of those things. And those are the only three things that you should really care about as a wide receiver. So I think he's the worst player in the NFL. I'm with you, Mike. And we'll probably talk about him a little bit when we get to some of our awards, not the flattering ones. But yeah, I think absolutely you need to make a change here, whether you go out and get someone else, whether it's Xavier Gibson. Hell, you can activate Jason Brownlee. I don't care what. You can play Sauce Gardner, wide receiver. I don't care. Randall Cobb should not be on the field.
Really make the Deion Sanders comparison work even more. Put him at wide receiver like Deion. The two things I want to go point out, one of them was made by a comment in chat I want to get to, and then the other one I want to just get my own personal feelings at. Like, Mecole Hardman's probably not that great a wide receiver. There's a reason the Chiefs gave up on him, I think, even though they really need a wide receiver badly. But at least they're not, again, like I said earlier, at least try. Mecole Hardman hasn't played particularly well this year, but he's gotten so few snaps.
Better than Randall Cobb.
You can't make an evaluation on it. And they give all these weird responses. This is what drove me nuts about Hackett. Well, we're not converting enough on third down. That does not make any sense. There's no correlation between Mecole Hardman doesn't play enough snaps and we're not converting on third down. That's like saying we're not converting on third down because I don't know karate. There's no correlation between the two things. They're two completely separate different entities. The fact he keeps trying to mesh it together and use it as some justification without at least trying. Have Hardman run a 50-yard go route, let Zach chuck it deep to him. Let him get the ball on a screen. Like, at least if he stinks and he fumbles the ball like Dalvin Cook did against Dallas, and you go, all right, now we know. But you don't know. And you're refusing to try. And not because Randall Cobb's a known quantity, or maybe he is. The known part of the quantity is that he's washed, and they continue to put him out there. Like Scott Liberty, again in chat, says he's only there because of Rodgers. Like, that would be acceptable if he was still just on the team, but like inactive every day. It's almost like an extra, like a highly paid assistant wide receivers coach who helps with morale, who helps with the finer points of things, who gives Garrett Wilson, a very young receiver with a similar skill set to, I think, Cobb in his prime, gives him some pointers. Like, if he was doing that, I got no problems with Randall Cobb being on this team. He's the number 3 receiver on a team that wants to go to the playoff. They got to go play Miami. They got to go probably play Kansas City at Arrowhead if they sneak into the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to play that well at Arrowhead. That's a tough environment. They got to go play Buffalo in Buffalo. Like, that's the challenge that these guys got to overcome. And they're going into this big gunfight with that knife. And it makes no sense.
And I've seen people push back on it because, of course, with Jets Twitter, with Twitter in general, everyone's going to have there's always going to be one person that says the opposite of what you're saying. And the argument
was it that guy in your replies who was like, analytics don't tell the whole story?
There was one of them. There was a few. Yeah, that was one person who's like, what are these analytics? And I'm like, dude, I literally showed his catches and yards. What more do you want? But no, there's always people that push back. And I've seen some people be like, oh, you really think Randall Cobb's the biggest problem with the offense? We got bigger worries. First of all, I'm not even saying Randall Cobb is the biggest issue with the offense. He very well might be, because anytime you got a guy out there who's a waste of space for half of your snaps, that's a problem. But even if he's not the biggest problem, it's still a very large problem because it does significantly impact the team. I love that Zach Rosenblatt of The Athletic tweeted this out earlier this week. The Jets' EPA per play when Randall Cobb is on the field, would rank 32nd by a mile, not even close, would rank dead last in the NFL. Meanwhile, when Xavier Gipson is on the field, they rank 12th. So yeah, it really does matter the personnel you have on the field, even if Cobb's doing nothing, because wide receiver is one of those positions that unless you're dropping passes, it can be hard to tell if you're bad at your job.
And he is.
And he is dropping passes, and he's barely getting targeted. When he is getting targeted, he's either dropping passes or whatever. But even still, he's horrible at his job, and the numbers show that. Like, the Jets are the worst offense in the NFL when he's on the field, and it's not close. The second next team is not close. Like, even if you're not throwing him the ball, him being out there is a net negative for the team. Just him playing 50% of snaps is killing them. So that has to change. I know we're talking about 3 changes here. We've talked forever about the Randall Cobb one because I'm passionate about it.
That could be annoying. 1.5 of the changes is just Cobb.
I agree. Like, I think it's such an obvious change. And like, even if Xavier Gipson isn't that guy, even if Jason Brownlee isn't that guy, or Mecole Hardman or whoever, they're going to be better than Randall Cobb. And if they're not, you go out and get a wide receiver, which they should have done already in the offseason. Should have signed DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sorry. I will die on that hill. I will forever die on that hill. But
and now he's got to languish in Tennessee. What do you say?
Here's what's dumb. I sent a tweet today about the because Odell got into a fight or whatever, and I was like, really funny that the Jets were not funny, but really interesting that the Jets were interested in throwing the bag at Odell, not like paying him top dollar, but they were interested in Odell. But they weren't interested in Hopkins for like character concerns. Meanwhile, Odell getting in fights and he can't be on the field. Anyway, somebody replied and was like, "Oh, what's Hopkins done this year? Dude's on pace for like 1,100 yards in a terrible passing offense. What do you mean? What has he done this year?" People look at his stats and are like, "Oh, he's in one game over 100 yards." He's been good in a terrible passing offense. Like, anyway.
36-year-old Ryan Tannehill is his quarterback. He's not prime Ryan Tannehill anymore, and he's still producing.
Now he's got Malik Willis. Like.
Hopefully it's Levis. I want to see him. But what do you think the number 2 change should be? Something schematic, something on the defensive side of the ball?
All right, let's see. I wrote down a few. The Cobb one was my number 1. I'll go defense here, and I'll stick with like personnel stuff. I was very excited to see what Carl Lawson would do this season, and I was really hopeful because I loved that signing when it happened. I really did. I thought it was one of my favorite moves that the Jets have made in years. Unfortunately, the dude isn't healthy. And, he wasn't healthy because of the torn Achilles. The Jets restructured his contract this offseason, and I thought it was a good move. I genuinely didn't hate it at the time, even though they could have saved $15 million by cutting him. I really was like, I'm confident he's going to bounce back this year if he's healthy. And then he had the back injury, and he's clearly not healthy. I don't want to see Carl Lawson active on game days. It's as simple as that. I don't think he should be playing. I'm pretty sure he played like 25 snaps this last game. Will McDonald played like 6. That can't be happening. The Jets pass rush is good. It's already very good. I want to see a pass rush without Carl Lawson in the game because he's a complete net negative. Like, he just does not provide any value. He's the Randall Cobb of the defense. I'm pretty sure he has 1 pressure this season or whatever in like 5 games that he's played, 4 games, whatever it is. He's not providing anything of value. Give his snaps to Will McDonald. Give more to Bryce Huff. Give Bryce Huff as many snaps as you can. Even give him to Jermaine Johnson, whoever you're giving him to. Carl Lawson should not be playing. And it really sucks, like, to say that. And it makes me really sad because I love Carl Lawson. 1, as a person, he's an awesome dude. And 2, I just wish we could have seen a healthy Carl Lawson with the Jets. But I think it's come to the point where I'm ready to give up on ever seeing that, whether it's because of the Achilles and now the back. Obviously, I imagine they'll try and find a trade partner. I don't think they'll find one because it's just his contract and everything. Either way, there are 10 defensive linemen on the active roster right now. He's the worst of those 10. He should not be active on game days.
I'll give myself some credit. I was big on get rid of him in the offseason. I was hammering that, and I was honestly thinking about Corey Davis too before we knew what happened with Corey Davis. By God, is he missed right now? Imagine if they had Corey Davis instead of Randall Cobb. But because the problem with Lawson, I mean, an Achilles number 1 is Aaron Rodgers that can attest to now. You know how bad an Achilles can be, and then people go, "Oh, it's a back injury." Like, it sounds dumb to say, but your back is like your whole body. Like, so if your back is hurting, just in terms of, even if it's a minor irritation in your back can like ruin everything. And so much of Lawson's.
Oh, whoa. Dude, this is amazing. We have breaking Jets wide receiver news again on the show. Mecole Hardman is being traded to the Chiefs.
He's being traded.
That's so funny. In
a late round pick swap. So that's the end of Mecole Hardman. Well, again, Forget what we said about Hardman. That's gone now. That's the second time with Hardman too, because Hardman was in the Elijah Moore thing.
We need to recap. So there's been an Elijah Moore trade live on the show right after we just talked about how Elijah Moore was, not getting replaced by Mecole Hardman. We had the Denzel Mims thing that happened live on the show or something.
No, that happened like an hour before the show.
An hour before the show.
Yeah.
Every time there's Jets wide receiver news, it happens during the show. This is ridiculous.
This is honestly insane. This is like the 5th time. It's crazy. Mike LaFleur got fired. Our first episode was don't necessarily fire Mike LaFleur. Then he got fired like right after it went up. But
I love this. This is so funny.
Mecole Hardman is back to the Chiefs,
which I'm not surprised. That they made the most sense to me of any landing spot.
I mean, yeah, they need a speed guy. They needed just somebody who, like some veteran out there, because Kadarius Toney wasn't doing anything. Sky Moore hasn't developed like they thought he would, and Rashee Rice is good, but he's got drop issues. But God, talk about 2 big whiffs from Joe Douglas between not cutting Lawson and then signing Hardman. I mean, 2 gigantic whiffs. And again, that's why I'm so pissed about all this. They never gave him a chance to really make something of himself with the Jets. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just literally just tweeting out about it. This is so funny. I really think, and I said this before, that I think they brought him in, and then Xavier Gipson kind of just took his job. I really think that's what happened.
Xavier Gipson doesn't play either, though, so I don't know if he took anybody's job.
I'm not fully justifying it, but I think Xavier Gipson kind of took the role they had envisioned for Mecole Hardman, combined with the fact that they had to completely change their offensive philosophy after Aaron Rodgers went down. This is not me defending them, by the way, because they're playing Randall Cobb 49% of snaps. You're telling me they can't find a role for Mecole Hardman? They absolutely could have. But I think that they brought him in with the expectation that he was going to play a larger role. Then Xavier Gipson, they realized that they had something in him. So they're like, okay, Gibson's going to be our return man, which I imagine Hardman was probably the favorite for that until Gipson took that job. And then Gipson was like, all right, maybe we can use this guy a little bit on offense. And then unfortunately the Rodgers injury happened. And they're like, oh, well, we don't really even need that role in the offense at all now. Now it's just kind of, we're going heavy on 2-3 tight ends. And unfortunately, here we are. And it sucks. I mean, I'm glad they got something. It's a late round pick swap. I didn't expect anything else.
Okay, so now the comp update is out. The Jets are sending Hardman and a 2025 7th round pick to the Chiefs for a 2025 6th round pick, which is pretty standard. That's the standard, like, take this guy off our hands right now, and we just swap some picks just to make an official trade. Like that's the pretty standard. You give the guy in a 7th, and you get a 6th.
Didn't Mecole Hardman get that jet chain?
I hope he did. I hope it's still on layaway and he can cancel the payments, man.
I hope he kept the receipt. Oh man, poor guy. I feel bad for him. I genuinely do, because he was just legit never given a shot.
28 snaps he played in his Jets career. $4 million for 28 snaps. Hold on, let me do some quick math here. So it was a $4 million contract he signed
for 20. It's gonna be 7. It'd be or whatever it is.
That's like $142,857 a snap. Remember that one throw Zach Wilson sailed him in the Cowboys game? That was worth $143,000.
I'll take that deal. I mean, I guess you can't feel that bad for him with when you look at it that way. But yeah, I mean, I think Kansas City's a good landing spot for him. It's a shame. Like I there's no way to be like I like this move or I don't like it. It just felt inevitable. I don't like the overall situation, and I think that the Jets absolutely could have done more to get him involved, especially because if anybody's tuning in now after this and they missed our rant about Randall Cobb, rewind it like 15 minutes or 10 minutes, because boy, we just went off on Randall Cobb, rightfully so, because, and it's like, I'm not shitting on Randall Cobb as a person, but as a player right now provides zero value. And Mecole Hardman, he would provide something. Now, I think even more so, yeah, the Jets probably got to go out and add a receiver. Like I fully believe that. Probably should have done it in the offseason. Unfortunately, I guess whatever, maybe they would have been more aggressive with Corey Davis if they knew Corey Davis was going to retire. But still, I think at the deadline, it's coming up in a couple of weeks, you really got to look into adding a wide receiver. And I'm not even saying it has to be like a Jerry Jeudy. It could be somebody more insignificant, like, I don't know, somebody from Carolina, like Terrace Marshall or something. Like somebody. Anybody.
He's not an improvement either, though.
Not an improvement of a Randall Cobb?
Well, I mean, he's not like, oh, if we get Terrace Marshall, we'll be a legitimate.
I don't care. Anybody's better than Randall. You know what we were saying about Zach Wilson like 4 weeks ago? That's how I feel about Randall Cobb. Anybody would be an improvement over Randall Cobb right
Actually,
now.
More so about Cobb, because at least, like, I've seen positive plays from Wilson.
Yeah.
in a Jets uniform. Haven't from Cobb.
It's true. Yeah, Dan is bringing this up too. A little dig at Elijah Moore here. Dan in chat said, "Hey, it could have been worse. He could have demanded a trade in the midst of a win streak." I want to give credit to Mecole Hardman. I think he's handled this pretty well. I know he made comments to Rich Cimini. I know he made comments to Rich Cimini, but I don't blame the dude at all for being upset. And he hasn't made a huge stink about it. He really hasn't. He's not.
Didn't he have that tweet like, "I'm going to tell my side of the story soon" or something like that?
Yeah, but that. Look, if a wide receiver is not happy and that's all they trade, or if that's all they tweet, I'm happy because that's pretty low. Considering the bar, I feel like the bar for wide receivers tweeting when they're unhappy is pretty high. That's like Stephon Diggs mid offseason, just weirdness. That's what that is. I think he handled it fine, and now he's going back to Kansas City, which good for him. I'm happy for him.
I think it might be time, honestly, to move on to the award show now that I think we want to make sure we get those awards in because Mecole kind of sidetracked us, especially now that one of our big changes involved the passing game and then maybe get him more involved. And then not even 10 minutes later, bye-bye Mecole Hardman.
I think I had an award for Mecole Hardman. I'm going to have to change that. But first, Mike, before we even get into those awards, I got a little message for you and all of our friends from our friends over at DraftKings. Hey, Jets fans, DraftKings is running a new promotion that you won't want to miss. New users can place a $5 first bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. You'll also be rewarded with a separate no-sweat single-game parlay every single day when you opt in. All you have to do is sign up with our code FSBETS. Using our code FSBETS, that's FSBETS, it should be on the screen. Not only gets you these great bonuses, but it also directly supports our podcasts. It helps us out in the process. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use our code FSBETS, that's FSBETS, to maximize your first bets and parlays. This offer is available for new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. Now, Mike, it is time for the Woodies.
It can't be that. It can't be that.
For anybody who missed the beginning of the show, they're probably very confused by that. But
let's just call them the Rogers, like the Oscars.
I like having E's at the end. The Jetty, the Pressies.
You're trying way too hard, man.
I don't like Pressies.
I don't know if I like that at all.
I think I like Woody's the best.
Award show to be determined later once we come up with a name that doesn't make us sound like 6-year-olds. The first one on this dalliance that we will undertake is the MVP.
Starting off with the heavy hitter. I feel like it's natural too.
Sure. And maybe this might be starting with best picture, but I want to acknowledge the best player on this team. And for me, that's been Bryce Hall. Bryce Hall in a way that he is not going to be this good. I'm not going to sound dumb for saying it, but it reminded me of the pre-85 Bears Walter Payton, where the Bears would still win.
All right, hold on. All right, DJ Reed. All right.
No, because here's why. He's not going to be that good, obviously, but literally the only thing they would do is run with Walter Payton 25 times a game, and he would still run for 1,600 yards a year, and they'd win a lot of their games. Literally, for most of the game, half of the Jets' plays are either Bryce Hall or throw to Garrett Wilson. It's one of those two things. And Bryce is getting the most touches, and he's been phenomenal. Much better than I thought he'd be. That's why I was such a big Dalvin Cook proponent early on, is I didn't think a guy, I know he's young, but he's a bigger back who's going to be running through the tackles a lot off ACL surgery. I didn't think he was going to be this good immediately from the jump. And my God, has he been amazing. I mean, he obviously had the great game against Denver. Then against the Chiefs, he had a couple nice plays. The Eagles, he was grinding out some really tough yards against a very tough front seven. And then in Buffalo, he broke a couple big runs. This offense without Bryce Hall, I don't even know if it's functional. That's how important he is. So if we want to get into that whole debate of, he's the most valuable in terms of value he has to the team, I think it's clearly Bryce.
Yeah, that's exactly how I approach this too. I looked at it as, if you take this player away, who is the most valuable? Who is the most indispensable player on this roster? That if you take him away, the team doesn't work, the team doesn't function. And I also arrived at the same conclusion as you did. My MVP is also Bryce Hall. I think that if you remove him from the equation and you take him out of the offense, and it's Michael Carter and Dalvin Cook running at running back, and Izzy Abanikanda, this Jets offense doesn't score any points. I fully believe that. I fully believe that they will not function without Bryce Hall. And you could say a similar thing for Garrett Wilson. I think he's very close to Breece Hall in that respect, even if he hasn't had the same numbers that Breece Hall has had this year. I think if you take out Garrett Wilson and now your wide receiver core is Allen Lazard, I want to say Mecole Hardman, but it's not anymore. It's Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, and Xavier Gibson, or Jason Brownlee, or Irv Charles, or whoever. Like if that's your wide receiver core, that's pretty bad. Like that's the worst in the NFL. That's the worst wide receiver core in the NFL, which is why maybe they should have added a wide receiver. But I digress. So I was tempted to say Garrett Wilson. I was, but it's got to be Breece Hall. The offense does not function without Breece Hall. He is a cut above every other running back in the room by a long stretch. And when he is on the field, the Jets offense actually looks dynamic. When he's not on the field, and when it's Breece Hall, when it's Michael Carter or Dalvin Cook, the offense is bad. Like it just is bad. I'm pretty sure with Dalvin Cook, they rank 32nd in EPA, and with Breece Hall, they rank towards the middle of the pack. So I think that by itself right there shows you how valuable and important Breece Hall is into this offense. And I don't want to hear about running back position value and all that stuff, because a running back can be the most important player in the team. I would say that the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey, is probably the most important player on that team. The Jets offense does not work without Breece Hall. He is the most valuable player on the team.
Now let's go to the LVP, the least valuable player. I'm actually going to switch mine up because we just had a big, long rant on Randall Cobb, who I think we know who would be number one. So I'm going to pick somebody different. Or rather, I think some people, because it's a tie. It's a group award, and it goes to everybody who has played at either left or right tackle. Mostly because I think Laken Tomlinson has not been amazing, but I think he's been better than last year and certainly is serviceable. Connor McGovern has not been particularly good in pass protection, but run blocking, I think he's been very good. And the Jets are a run-first team, so I'm going to be pretty happy with a good run-blocking center like that who can free up big Breece Hall runs. He was instrumental in that big run against Denver that he had. And Joe Tippmann, been up and down, but for a rookie, put in the situation he's been in, I have to be very impressed with what I've seen from Joe Tippmann. For a rookie moving positions, because he was a center in college, impressed with that. So let's look at how it started out. It was Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton. Becton, I'll get into first. He's been wildly up and down. It almost seems like depending on the style of rusher. If it's a bigger, strong guy, he can handle him. If it's a speed guy, he can't. And Micah Parsons got him. I know that Josh Sweat got him a couple times. Denver, he was one of the few guys who I think didn't really have an amazing game. He was kind of, depending on if he got Nick Bonito, who was like a speedy guy, who would end up going to Becton. And then Dwayne Brown, who was the left tackle, and I know he's been hurt a lot, but when he played, Dwayne Brown looked every bit of 38 years old, and he's looking like a guy closer to retirement than the Pro Bowl level he was at with Houston and Seattle. And then Elijah Vera-Tucker comes in to play right tackle, and he's been good, but then I look at the pass block win rate and the run block win rate, say that 5 times fast, but he's been good, but kind of not as good as I thought he was. Like, I thought he was like fringe top 15 lineman in the league, and he's a couple notches, I think, below that. And then he got hurt, which brings Max Mitchell back in the fold, who, again, held up pretty well for game one, but we've seen how extended Max Mitchell can go, and I don't have a ton of hope for it. So while the offensive line, I think, has been better than a lot of people thought it would be and is better than a lot of people seem to perceive it is, the tackle spot's really in question through injuries and through poor performance. So at the risk of giving Randall Cobb all of the worst awards, I'm going to give it to the collective tackle situation.
Man, I can't believe you just said Elijah Vera-Tucker is the least valuable player on it. No, I'm kidding. In a vacuum, that sounds awful. I'll disagree with that. I think that obviously they've had a lot of injuries there. Dwayne Brown, while he was very, very bad, obviously very bad, he was given nightmare matchups like to start the season. Also, I hate the win rate stats. I really do. I rarely agree with them when I see them. I rarely look at win rate stats from ESPN's win rate stats, and I'm like, yeah, that's reflective of how they played. It rarely actually reflects how they played to me. So I think Mekhi Becton has been fine this year. He's had his ups and downs. Like you said, he's inconsistent at times, but I don't think he's a true liability. I think he's a starting caliber tackle. And Max Mitchell, I think he's held up pretty well the last 2 weeks. And especially as a run blocker, he's really impressed me as a run blocker. So I don't think there's a major concern with Becton and Mitchell, considering that they've already lost 2 tackles. I think being in the spot that they are isn't the worst. So I'm going to disagree, especially because I don't give a shit that we already talked about him. Randall Cobb is my least.
I thought you were going to go with Dalvin.
No, I mean, because the thing is, yeah, Dalvin Cook is also just about as washed as Randall Cobb. I think Cobb's even more washed. But Cobb plays 50% of snaps. Cook doesn't. Cook played like 9 snaps last week.
It actually looked kind of okay.
And he looked all right. Just for the sheer amount of playing time that Randall Cobb has, he has to be the least valuable player in the team. Nobody else on the team, dare I say, nobody else in the NFL, I said this before, nobody else in the league is playing as many snaps as he is and providing less than what Randall Cobb is. I'm not going to go through the whole rant again. You can rewind and listen to that. I think it's at like the 15-minute mark, 20-minute mark, whatever it was, where we started going off. I read all the stats off because, just to put it shortly, he's the worst at getting open in the league. He has the worst hands, and he's the worst run blocker in his position. Those aren't like, it's not an exaggeration. All 3 of those are facts that stats can back up. He's terrible. He's awful.
And I wonder what his yards of separation on average is. He's probably the worst there too.
It's probably, I didn't look that up, but it's probably got, if he's 3 times worse than anybody else in yards per route run, I'm sure he's pretty bad at separating, especially because his drop rate is so low. His drop rate is so high. So yeah, I think that he's clearly the worst player on the team. Like in terms of what he's providing, he is the least valuable player. And I don't want to pick on the guy. I know I've talked bad about him now for like 15 minutes, but like, yeah, he's just bad. He's just really bad.
So we're going to go to a 2-pronged award, the offensive and defensive players of the year. And in traditional NFL honors fashion, I'm not going to make the offensive player of the year the same as the MVP. That's typically how they do it. So I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to give Garrett Wilson the offensive player of the year because I genuinely feel bad for this guy because this guy has been put through the ringer of bad quarterback situations in his first 2 years. He thought he was getting Aaron Rodgers, and then what do you know, 4 plays in, no more Aaron Rodgers. I just feel bad for Mecole Hardman, too, because he signed thinking he would play with Aaron Rodgers, and then he never was on the field with Aaron Rodgers once, which had to suck for him. But with Wilson, it sucks more given his importance to the team. And still, he's producing. Now, again, I know part of it is it seems lately that Hackett has basically told Wilson, all right, this is the play. If you're ever in doubt, just find Carrot and throw it to him, which is not a bad strategy. And it signifies the tier of elite receiver that I think he's pushed himself into, even in adverse circumstances. Like, there's a couple guys. I know Minnesota says, all right, here's the play. If that's not open, find Justin Jefferson. Raiders go, if nothing's open, look for Devontae Adams. That's where Garrett Wilson is. And I'm hopeful that Rodgers is anything close to the Rodgers we come to know. And we get to finally see him with Garrett Wilson next year, because if he keeps playing like this, I mean, he's going to be an all-pro, plain and simple.
Yeah, I gave my offensive player of the year to Breece Hall, but it doesn't matter. Like, honestly, you might have talked me more into Garrett Wilson there. Just like, if we're saying who is the absolute best player on this offense, it might be Garrett Wilson. Like, it's either or. Either way, both of them are phenomenal players who, again, if we're talking in value, this offense realistically, it doesn't work without either of them. If one of those guys go down, I don't think this Jets offense works. And I think just in terms of their talent and what they have been able to produce despite the situation that they're in, it's very easily both of those guys. I'll quickly go into my defensive player of the year. To this point, like there's a lot of talented guys in this Jets defense. Like, I think it was last year, we probably would have said Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams would have had a really strong case. Guys like DJ Reed, I think CJ Mosley is having an awesome year. Obviously, Bryce Huff is amazing. But I'm giving defensive player of the year to Quincy Williams. And I think that, there's a couple other awards, if we go through them, that Quincy Williams might win as well, because I don't know if you can find a player in the NFL who has made a bigger leap from last year to this year than Quincy Williams. Because last year I would have said that he was a below average linebacker who had plenty of flashes of greatness. And we always said if he can put it all together, he can be one of the best linebackers in football. Well, right now he is. He's one of the best linebackers in the NFL. The Jets have the 2 highest, if you care about PFF coverage grades, they have the 2 highest linebackers they have the 2 linebackers with the highest PFF coverage grades. CJ Mosley's number 1, Quincy Williams is number 2. Quincy Williams is having a fantastic season. It goes beyond the numbers. You just see his impact every single week. He's finally been able to put everything together. He's elite in coverage. He, I think, leads all linebackers in run stops as well. I think he's the best player in this defense, and you could argue he's one of the most irreplaceable players in this defense as well. Quincy Williams is my defensive player of the year.
My defensive player of the year is Justin's guy, Bryce Huff, and he narrowly edged it out. I know the stats don't look the same as last year, but Quinnen Williams, even though he only has half a sack, he's still getting into the backfield as much. And I remember on All 22 once in the Eagles game I was watching, there was one play where there were literally 4 linemen blocking Quinnen Williams on one play. So he's still getting attention. I think Quincy he should owe a lot of his success to his brother because he is getting to go into those backfields untouched and getting to fly around a lot. And Sauce Gardner, week 1, kind of a not Sauce Gardner game. Pretty much since then, he's been Sauce Gardner. He's been giving up like 2-3 catches every game for like 10 yards, which is what Sauce Gardner does. So, but despite all of that, none of them can claim to have the highest pressure rate in the NFL. And I believe he's 5th in total pressures despite having a lot less snaps than guys like Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson in Detroit and TJ Watt in Pittsburgh. It's not TJ Watt in Pittsburgh. He's been hurt, but guys of that ilk, definitely Garrett and Hutchinson are at the top. That's where Bryce Huff is, and the every down concerns are eliminated. Now, I got him early on because that's what he came into the league as. He was kind of skinny, almost like Will McDonald level. He was Will McDonald in a smaller conference team at Memphis and a lot less height. And the Jets snagged him undrafted, and they built him up into an every down run defender. He's never going to be Jermaine Johnson as a run defender, but he gets in the way. He's good enough there where he can make plays. And again, just as a pass rusher, what this guy's evolved into, how many guys in the league have that get off that he has? I mean, he might be the best in the league in terms of snap to rush. He's up there, certainly. And that can be the difference between being a good pass rusher and a great pass rusher. And he has this innate ability to do that. And it's only going to get better with time.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to tell me about how great Bryce Huff is. I mean, Jets fans have been banging this drum since last year. He is the best pass rusher in the NFL, snap for snap, bar none. Like there's nobody else who competes with him, and he has shown this season that what I think Jets fans believe for a long time is even if you give him more snaps, he's not going to get less productive. In fact, the last 3 weeks, he's played his most snaps, I think, over the last 3 years. In each of the last 3 weeks, his snap count has gone up. And each week, he has set a new career high for pressures. He had 7 pressures against Denver, or 7 pressures against, what is 3 games ago? What was the Chiefs game? 7 pressures against the Chiefs, 8 pressures against Denver, and then 9 pressures against the Eagles. The guy's unreal. Like, he's completely unbelievable. And I'll throw a couple of numbers out there just for fun. I've been tracking this each week for the last 3 weeks. PFF has a stat called pass rush productivity, which basically just kind of takes everything into account with sacks, hits, hurries, and it's all relative to the amount of times that a player rushes the passer. Through 6 weeks, Bryce Huff's PRP, his pass rush productivity, is 17.1. The next highest among any other player is 12.9, which is Myles Garrett, and then 12.6, Micah Parsons. Bryce Huff is far and away the most productive pass rusher in the NFL this season. So you don't need to tell me how great he is. He is unbelievable. If he was playing even more snaps, I'd probably give him the award over Quincy Williams. And I think people are starting to realize now that Bryce Huff's no longer the best kept secret. He's just a star. He's actually.
I saw an aggregator account tweet about him. I'm like, oh no, the jury's out. Damn it.
It was so funny. All in one yesterday. You had Dove Kleiman and then the JP football account or whatever. Both of them tweeted about Bryce Huff. And I was like, that's it. The aggregators have discovered Bryce Huff. It's over. And then today on the Pat McAfee show, JJ Watt was talking about Bryce Huff. And I'm like, oh no, they blew it. The Jets should have signed him 2 weeks ago before anybody was talking about him. Now everybody's talking about him. There's no more tweets about, I think Ari Myrov tweeted about him. There's no more tweets where they show Bryce Huff. And people are like, who in the comments? Now it's getting to the point of oh, people actually know who this is. And so the Jets, they better extend this dude quick. The price tag is only going up.
Now, my most improved was going to be Bryce Huff. So fair. I'll go to my number two guy in that category. And the stats may not show it, but I've just been blown away with him in the last couple of weeks. Jermaine Johnson has really been coming into his own. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a 10-sack every year guy because he was at Georgia before the 1 year at Florida State. And outside of the one Florida State year, he wasn't a 10-sack guy in college. He was an old school 4-3 defensive end who stops a run. And that's kind of a dying breed in the NFL. A lot of that scheme it's kind of fallen out of favor with how much nickel and dime stuff's coming in and how much a lot of those guys just become sort of specialty pass rushers. Jermaine Johnson's a throwback, and he's stuffing the run, number one. But number two, he's already matched his sack total from last season. And it seems like every sack he gets is a huge moment in a Jets win. He had that big one where he chased down Josh Allen last year. He had the Russell Wilson one when they were driving. He pokes the ball out of Dallas Goedert's hands, and it leads to the interception for Quentin Williams. He gets in the backfield a lot against the beat-up Eagles offensive line. I'm impressed with Jermaine Johnson. And once they play Carl Lawson less and play Will McDonald more, if they can keep Bryce Huff, I know that they're going to have to rotate guys, but having Huff, McDonald, and Johnson on the edge, I mean, that's a hell of a pass rush team for years to come.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think there was a ton of hype around Jermaine Johnson going into the season. Like everyone was like, and we talked about this I think last week. And I don't think during the first few weeks of the season he was kind of living up to that hype. But the last couple of weeks he's been on one. Like he has been on a tear in the last couple of weeks. Obviously he was great against Philly. He caused the interception for Quinnen Williams. He was really good against Denver as well. We're finally starting to see the Jermaine Johnson that we were hoping to see when he was killing it this summer. So I'm just excited to see where he goes going forward. I don't have him as my most improved player, but if you ask me in like 6 weeks, I might just do that because I think he's going to just continue to get better. I mean, my most improved player was Quincy Williams. That I don't think there's another player. I know we've talked about him a ton. I don't think there's another player in this Jets roster who has taken a bigger step this season than Quincy Williams. You can rewind like 10 minutes or 8 minutes when we just talked about him. Just for the sake of not talking about him again, I'll shout out Jeremy Ruckert. I think he's becoming a more well-rounded and improved player. He didn't really play at all last year. We barely got to see him. But I would say right now he's an integral part of the offense. When he is out there, the Jets find success, generally running the ball, but I think he also provides value as a receiver. I would love to see him take on an even larger role moving forward. And honestly, if we add another change, we were talking about before, like changes the Jets should make. I like CJ Uzomah, but Jeremy Ruckert should be tight end 2 moving forward. He should be playing 35, 40% of snaps a game. He's just a very important player to this team. So I would say that Jeremy Ruckert, if it's not Quincy Williams, I'll give a shout out to Jeremy Ruckert for most improved.
And now, Justin, I know that you had some like lifetime achievement awardee-esque special awards that you wanted to give out to some of particular Jets players who are in your purview. So let's hear them. What do you got for us?
Sure. So I honestly, I didn't know how this segment was going to work. I didn't know what awards we were going to do. So I just wrote down a shit ton, and I'll give you some of the awards, and I'll ask you who you think it should be, and I'll also tell you mine. We'll rapid fire these because they're pretty quick. Firstly, there's a couple of like regular, like standard ones, like Rookie of the Year. We didn't cover that. I think it's got to be Joe Tippmann.
Well,
right?
He's the only one. I mean, he's the only one who's played.
Yeah, he's the only one who's playing. Will McDonald has barely played. We haven't even seen guys like Izzy Abanikanda, Zaire Barnes, Jark Bernard-Converse, Carter Warren. Like it's got to be Joe Tippmann. Unfortunately, he's hurt. Sounds like it might be long term, but even if it is, he's pretty clearly the Rookie of the Year so far this season. I have Comeback Player of the Year, and I have 2 guys here. And I think you could probably – that's a great shout actually in chat. Xavier Gibson for Rookie of the Year. He is another one. I didn't think of that. I don't know why I didn't think of him because he was undrafted. But good shout by Cisco in chat. I think I'd still give it to Tippmann for now, but Gibson has a chance to potentially win that. But anyway, Comeback Player of the Year. Mike, I want to hear who you think because I think there's 2 obvious picks. But I want to hear, who do you think Comeback Player of the Year should be?
Well, comeback in terms of overcame some sort of personal issue, like how DeMar Hamlin's going to win Comeback Player of the Year this year, or like played badly and now is better?
Hey, either, however you want to interpret it.
I'm going to go with, golly, is it Zach Wilson? Could it be Zach Wilson?
Oh, I wasn't thinking Zach, but that's not a bad call. It's
literally, the whole town wanted to behead this guy like a month ago, or
he's a comeback player.
Now
he's a comeback player of the midseason. Like he came back midseason.
Yeah, I mean for a couple weeks. Golly, is it Mekhi?
Mekhi is one of the 2 obvious. Mekhi and Bryce are the 2 obvious ones for me. Bryce is the obvious one where it's like, oh, he tore his ACL legitimately about a year ago at this time, and is come back and shown absolutely no signs of rust and is one of the best running backs in football. We both agreed he was the MVP of the Jets. So I think he's obvious. And Mekhi, even if you want to say he hasn't been great this season, right? I think he's been better than you're giving him credit for. I think he's been inconsistent, but still solid. I just the fact that he was able to come back from consecutive knee injuries, lose 50 pounds in the offseason, and come back and play every single game this season and move around from different positions. Like, how do you not give the guy credit for that? How can you not say Comeback Player of the Year, Mekhi Becton? So I think Becton and Bryce are the 2 guys that I pencil in for that one.
That's fair.
How about, so this one was one of the, well, I'll skip this for a second. I'll go to this one. So biggest disappointment of the year. There's a few of them. I think we'll have different answers for this, but who's your biggest?
For me, it's Dalvin Cook. I thought Dalvin Cook just had something left in the tank, and he had less than nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
Bank robber is what Dalvin Cook is. Stealing $8 million.
That's a good one. The bank robber award. That would have been a good one. I had a feeling you were going to say Cook. Obviously, I did not say Cook because my expectations for Cook were very low. I don't know if they were this low, but they were pretty low. So my biggest disappointment, we talked about him before, it's Carl Lawson. I was really excited for him, man. I was really, really excited to see what he could do when he was finally healthy, and he's just not healthy, and that sucks. So Carl Lawson's my biggest disappointment. Not even his fault. He's just hurt. The guy shouldn't be playing. He's clearly hurt. Anyway, from that to what I dubbed the Get This Guy Off My Team award.
Do I even need to say it?
Okay, so it's funny is I didn't give this to Randall Cobb. Although I agree, get that guy off my team. I gave this one to Dalvin Cook. I wanted to give Dalvin Cook something.
So I thought you were going to say Hackett.
No, I don't. I am less down on Hackett after he had a couple of good weeks of play calling, even if it's been since then. But yeah, I gave this one to Dalvin Cook. Who would you say? Cook? Would you say Hardman or not Hardman? He's like, good work. That actually already happened.
Hardman already is gone.
Hardman is off the team.
Hardman accepted his award and then got on a plane to Kansas City.
That was the award the Jets gave to him. Like, get this guy off my team.
They gave him a pink slip. That's what the award is. It's a pink slip.
Who would you give that award to?
I mean, it would have to just be Cobb, just because the level of anger he stirs in me is it drives me crazy, because this is the biggest nepotism case you'll see on an NFL field in terms of a player because of another player this year. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's frankly preposterous even.
One might say ludicrous.
Other adjectives.
We've definitely talked a lot about Randall Cobb in this show. This episode has turned into a Randall Cobb roast, which wasn't my goal, but yeah, I don't think
we're Dean Martin all of a sudden doing Randall Cobb celebrity roasts.
I don't think I gave him any more awards, so I think he should be in the clear, hopefully. The next award, which I just created this award just to talk about the player, it's the Pay This Man Now award, and that's of course going to Bryce Huff. There's no one else this should go to. We don't even talk about it. Just pay this man now. It's a simple
pay Sauce too. I don't know.
Well, I don't think he's eligible, right? He's not eligible for an extension yet. He's got to be after 3 years.
Bend the rules. I don't care.
Yeah, pay that man. Pay everyone what they
pay him eventually.
Yeah, but pay Bryce Huff. Absolutely pay that man. Moment of the year. Now this is a fun one. I have one that I think should be the moment of the year, but I want to hear what you say.
I'm going to say, the obvious answer, which I don't think it'll be, was the punt return against Buffalo.
Okay. That is my answer, by the way. I agree that's the obvious answer.
That's the obvious answer. For me, I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to say the Tony Adams pick.
Ooh, okay. Sure.
Because that was just so, that was so unexpected. You just thought, okay, here we go again. I've seen this a million times. The Eagles are going to run out the clock, and there's the game, and then he just threw it right to him. With no one really even close to Tony Adams. He just threw it right to him.
Yeah, I like that choice. I mean, in terms of which was more important, you could definitely argue the Tony Adams one was more important, because that was you beat an undefeated team that you expected. Nobody expected the Jets to win that game. I think just for the pure emotional value of the punt return in week 1, I have to give it to that. You could not write a better story. You really couldn't. Aaron Rodgers goes down 4 games into the biggest, or 4 plays into the biggest game the Jets have played in well over a decade, since their last playoff game, I would say. And somehow that Zach Wilson comes in and they get to overtime against a really good Buffalo Bills team. And then Xavier Gibson, an undrafted rookie in his first game, is the hero, and he wins the game for the team. I think you got it. I think you got to give it to Xavier Gibson, but I don't blame you for picking Tony Adams. So we did offensive player of the year and defensive player of the year. I want to give a shout out for special teams player of the year, because I think there's a few options here. Honestly, the whole Jet special teams is awesome. And Brant Boyer deserves a ton of credit. But Mike, who is your special teams player of the year?
My special teams player of the year. I mean, Justin Hardy has he's got a case, but I can't turn down my guy, Greg Zuerlein.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
They didn't have Greg Zuerlein. I mean, they win half these games. Half their offense is field goals.
Yeah.
From Zuerlein. He saved us against Philly, saved us against Denver to a degree because they struggled in the red zone. I mean, Zuerlein has been bailing out Hackett to an unfathomable degree.
Yeah, I mean, he's missed 1 field goal this year. He hasn't missed an extra point. He's been great, just like he was great last year. I didn't give it to Zuerlein just because I wanted to talk about this guy. I give it to Thomas Morstead, who I think is one of the best punters in the NFL. Also, the other reason that I'm giving it to Thomas Morstead.
Are you kidding me?
Should have mentioned this earlier, but we got an interview with Thomas Morstead that actually literally just dropped 1 minute ago. It dropped at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So check that out.
You're unbelievable.
He's my special teams player of the year. Let's go, Thomas Morstead. Hey, man, in that interview, I said we got to start the Thomas Morstead for Pro Bowl campaign because amazingly, he's only been the one Pro Bowl in his career, which is pretty wild to me because he's been really good for a long time. So Thomas Morstead is my pick. But I shout out to Justin Hardy, shout out to Greg Zuerlein, shout out Thomas Hennessy, and honestly, shout out Irv Charles, what he's done the last couple of weeks because he's come in and played extremely well. But yeah, anyway, check out that Morstead interview. Anyway, so we got a couple more. Most underrated. I think how I interpreted this was most underrated by the fan base because you can be like, oh, Bryce Huff, but I think Jets fans know how good Bryce Huff is. So most underrated by the fan base. I have two. I have one for offense and one for defense. We can go through it quick. Mike, who do you think is most underrated?
Definitely Quentin Jefferson because I think he's leading the team in sacks outside of Huff. I mean, I thought this guy was just a complete dead-end rotational defensive lineman. He's been a legitimate impact player to the point where he's getting some really high snap counts. I've been very impressed. And I feel like he's gone under the radar because he's not a big name.
I agree. I gave him a shout-out when I did. I had him as signing of the offseason, which honestly there was not much competition for. But I agree. Quentin Jefferson has definitely been an underrated move that they've made. He's been a very effective pass rusher, which we knew he was that was his thing coming in to the Jets. He is a good interior pass rusher, but he's been quietly good. I have for defense, I think this guy just continuously gets overlooked by Jets fans and everybody. Like, I think Jets fans know he's good, but they don't realize how important he is. It's John Franklin Myers. Like, I just think John Franklin Myers is perennially underrated. We've talked a lot about Bryce Huff this season. John Franklin Myers is 12th among all edge rushers in pressures. And he also doesn't play a ton of snaps. He plays like 55% of snaps, which is not a lot compared to some of the top edge rushers. I believe
Carter by Cisco in chat.
Michael Carter II. Absolutely. I think he deserves a lot of credit as well. He's another guy who's just very underrated. JFM, by the way, and John Franklin Myers and Huff are the only two teammates, the only duo of edge rusher teammates who are both ranked in the top 15 in pressures. So I think John Franklin Myers deserves a lot of credit as well. And on offense, Tyler Conklin. And I think Jets fans are also starting to realize how good he is. I think he is the second best route runner in that entire offense behind Garrett Wilson. I think he's a really, really.
I think that's an indictment of the receivers.
It is definitely an indictment of like Alan Lazard and stuff. But I think he's a good route runner.
He's been okay, Lazard. I'll give him credit.
He has. I don't think he's been anything special, but he's been a little bit better than I expected. But I think Tyler Conklin is just a very good player, and they should find ways to get the ball in his hands more because he's also pretty dangerous after the catch, as we've seen the last couple of weeks. So I have Conklin and John Franklin Myers. I had signing of the offseason as Quentin Jefferson. I don't know. Would you disagree with that? I don't know if there's even one you put over him. Like,
I feel like he's the one who worked out. I thought we were gonna be sitting here talking about Mecole Hardman, and here we are. Mecole Hardman's back in Kansas City Red.
Honestly, legitimately, I'm not even joking. If it's not him, it's probably Thomas Morstead. Like, the only other signing that has probably been a positive. I mean, Al Woods, whatever, right? Like, fine.
Technically, Rodgers was not good in term of what he provided this year.
Well, he wasn't a signing. He wasn't a signing.
Addition, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in totality, Rodgers has been a worse offseason addition than Quentin Jefferson, just in terms of what they provided. This one was just to get this person an award, just because I think it's pretty funny. This is the What Does This Guy Even Do award. I gave that one to Tim Boyle. You could also replace that with the Does This Guy Even Exist, or the Is This Person a Figment of My Imagination award.
How is this person in the NFL award considering his college statistics?
Does Tim Boyle even exist, Mike? Like, even if Zach Wilson got hurt, I'm not confident. There's a non-zero chance that if Zach Wilson got hurt, Randall Cobb would come in at quarterback. And I mean that. I'm not even joking. He is their emergency quarterback. And I think there's a non-zero chance they'd be like, well, what if we just had Randall Cobb run the option? Like, what if we just had him run Wildcat?
What if he came in and he threw for like 300 yards?
Who, Tim Boyle or Randall Cobb?
No, Randall Cobb, and we're like, oh shit, he saved
Randall
the season.
Cobb, I take it back. He was just out of position. That's it. He wasn't the worst player in the NFL.
He's 33 and he was out of position for 10 years.
Yeah, now he's finally making the switch to quarterback.
He's the new oh god, I'm blanking. Steelers quarterback. Slash.
Antoine Randall?
No.
Oh.
Cordell Stewart.
Oh, Cordell Stewart. Okay.
Because Cordell Stewart, they drafted him as a quarterback, and they had a guy there, so they put him at like punter and wide receiver and stuff just to get him on the field. So they call him Slash.
But yeah, I think Tim Boyle deserves that because you and I both know that if they needed to turn to another quarterback, they would be turning to Trevor Siemian and not Tim Boyle, which raises the question, is Tim Boyle actually real? I don't know.
He could just be three children in a very tall trench coat.
Shout out BoJack Horseman. He totally could be.
Vincent Adult Man.
Could just be Vincent Adult Man. Last two awards, Coach of the Year. I think there's a couple of options for this one. But what do you think for Coach of the Year, Mike?
Tony Oden.
Ooh, okay. I wasn't thinking assistants, but that's good. Tony Oden deserves a lot of credit.
Tony Oden is the cornerbacks coach. I know Jeff Ulbrich might be a common answer, but I feel like Ulbrich, he does some stuff schematically, but this is Saleh's baby to a degree. Tony Oden, not only has he kept having Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed playing really good ball, but again, practice squad guys. Craig James had 2 targets and no catches allowed against the Eagles. And he was on the practice squad 11 days ago. You don't do that without a hell of a coach.
I agree. Tony Oden's a great shout. That is not who I would have thought of, but that's a good call. I went the obvious route with one. I had 2 options I wrote down. I went the obvious route, Robert Saleh. I think he's just gotten so much shit for no reason. I think I put this on Twitter after the Eagles win. You would be hard-pressed to find a coach who has done more with like what they were given this season than Robert Saleh. I mean, he's pretty much coached the entirety of his coaching career, of his head coaching career with a backup quarterback. He has the Jets at 3-3 with wins over the Bills and Eagles. And if they were able to pull out that win against the Chiefs, which, by all accounts, they very well could have, if not for some really questionable calls late in the game, we could be talking about this team being 4-2 with wins over the Bills, Eagles, and Chiefs. That's remarkable. With Zach Wilson at quarterback, not to mention how well the defense is playing. I think Robert Saleh, if the Jets can string together a few more wins here, he's going to put himself in Coach of the Year consideration. So I think he deserves some credit. And then Brent Boyer, because the Jets might have the best special teams in the league. There's a reason that he's stuck around through 3 different regimes, which is incredibly rare for the NFL. I mean, he goes back to Todd Bowles. That's how long Boyer has been here because he's really, really good at what he does. Like, he's really good. The fact that they were able to get, bring in Thomas Morrison and finally solidified a punting position. They got Greg Zuerlein, who, be honest, had a couple of years with Dallas. Like, he was like trending down when they got him, and he's been really good the last couple of years. Thomas Hennessy's a good long snapper. Justin Hardy is elite at what he does. We know that, but they've also been able to go out and get a guy like Irv Charles and keep him around and make him a great gunner. Xavier Gibson is a very dynamic returner who won them the game in Buffalo week 1. The Jets special teams is maybe the best special teams unit in the league, and I think Brent Boyer deserves a ton of credit. Anyway, last award, Mike. And again, this was just an award because I wanted to talk about this player. It is the most unlikely to save their career at the last possible moment award, and that has to go to Zach Wilson, to Zachary Capono Wilson, because how did we get here? Like, going into that Chiefs game, how did that even happen? I have no idea. I genuinely don't know how it happened.
We had a whole episode about Trevor Siemian.
We did.
How soon can Trevor Siemian play?
I changed my Twitter bio to Trevor Siemian is my QB. Like, I was so done. But somehow he rose from the ashes and saved his career. It was 11:59 p.m. on his career. It was about to strike midnight, and Zach Wilson just played the best game of his career. So I want to shout out to Zach Wilson for saving his career at the last possible moment. So yeah, I wanted to give a little shout out to Zach Wilson. For anybody on Twitter who says I hate Zach Wilson, who says I'm too negative about Zach Wilson, man, shut up. Like, first of all, shut up.
No, that's me. They mean me.
But I get accused of that shit too. Like, I've defended him in these instances. Like, I don't know, man. Twitter thinks I hate Zach Wilson because we've reached the point of Zach Wilson discourse where if you say a single bad thing about him, that he's not playing great, you're just going to be like, everyone's going to be like, you're just hating on him. He's playing so well. That's my Zachary. Like, he's great. And anyway.
Mute people from the state of Utah and it'll help a lot.
That was Mike. I enjoyed our first annual Woodies.
It can't be the name. It can't be the name. That was brainstorming, and now it got way out of hand.
What is Pressies? What do we want to say? Pressies? Jet Pressies?
Pressy sounds too like it sounds like something you'd win if you were like a good Girl Scout troop. You win like a Pressy award.
Pressy. I don't know about
like I don't know. It needs to be something.
the Greenie, the gang Greenies.
No, greenies are amphetamines, so that doesn't work either.
Aren't
so.
Greenies also like a dog chew toy or something? Am I making?
Yeah, you give them like help their but in baseball in the 80s, greenies were amphetamines. So I don't know if you want to go down that
what were you gonna say about the Greenies? I thought you that's like a bone they chew on.
No, yeah, it helps with their teeth.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Anyway, yeah, all right. So now that you've seen us brainstorm live on air and still get nowhere closer to a solution, let's just call time on this podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever it may be you get your podcasts. We're on all those sites, and YouTube and TikTok at the Jet Press. Sign us off, Justin.
I can't wait to do our next annual, or not even annual. Like maybe we can make this biannual. I don't know. I want to do another award show. They're very fun. I won't call it the word that you don't like that I'm saying. Anyway, also, yeah, before I do the sign off, check out our Thomas Morstead interview that just went live on our Jet Press YouTube channel like 12 minutes ago. Thomas is awesome. We've talked to him a couple of other times this season or this year. This was the first one we talked to him since like the post Aaron Rodgers thing. So I asked him about Zach Wilson. He gave a shout out to Irv Charles, asked him a couple of things at the end, like who's the funniest teammate? Which teammate would you most want to be on a deserted island with? Stuff like that. So it was fun time.
Michael Clemens, because then no wildlife would attack me.
Maybe that's what he said. I don't know. Or maybe he gave the cop-out answer and said his wife. I don't know. You got to check.
Well, that's not his teammate. His wife's not his teammate.
Hey man, I wasn't gonna press him. Pressy. I don't know. Anyway. Thank you. We're gone too long, man. Thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Luciano. You can follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also check us out on YouTube and TikTok. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. You guys know what to do. We've been doing this for a while. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time and live immediately following every Jets game. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That has been Mike Luciano. See you guys next time.
See you next week.